Tell you what we do. About once a month we come together in the cafeteria here with the students and we pick a topic that we think is of great relevance to everyone to discuss, to give students an opportunity to talk to each other about the topic. And we call it Pizza and Politics because we provide free pizza, which is the pizza that's up here. Everyone is welcome to help themselves to the pizza. But we have one requirement for you taking the free pizza, and that is that you be a partner with us in this effort today. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to speak if you don't want to speak. But in exchange for the free pizza, we ask that you at least be courteous of those who are speaking and try to refrain from any kind of loud conversation or other activities that would kind of interfere with that. That's our only requirement to participate in Pizza and Politics. And we just keep bringing the pizza in, and the pizza will keep flowing until we're done. We also broadcast this through Facebook Live, which allows our students and the other campuses to participate, and they will send free, and somebody here will read those comments to us and we'll respond to them. Today, we're going to be talking about marijuana. And Massachusetts' decision by referendum last year to legalize marijuana in the state. And joining us for this conversation today, we are very pleased to have somewhat of an expert in the laws regarding this. And that is your own Senator Micheal Rodrigues, here, who's come down to join us. Senator Rodrigues, thank you. Senator Rodrigues, your senator, serves on a special panel commissioned by the Massachusetts State Senate to investigate this whole process of legalization of marijuana. And they traveled out to Colorado and Washington to look at what was happening out there after those states legalized it. And then, as you know, the voters last November approved it here in Massachusetts, but we are a long way from, we are still a ways away from it becoming a eventuality. There's so much that goes behind this decision. It's not as simple as the voters decided, so tomorrow you light up. There's so much more to this. And that's why we were so glad when Micheal said he would join, Senator Rodrigues said he would join us here today for this conversation. And so we will call on Senator Rodrigues from time to time to perhaps answer some of your questions, clarify some points, or maybe even educate us all on some of the aspects that we may not know about, that I certainly may not know about, and I'm sure that pertains to a lot of you. So I'm sure there's going to be no shortage of opportunities for Senator Rodrigues to get up here. So rather than asking him to kick it off, I'm going to again ask you folks, because we do like this. We like this to be student to student, talking to each other about these important matters. So who would like to start off? Well, wait a minute. Before we do that, are we hooked into the other campuses yet? Okay, so we are on with Facebook Live, which allows the other campuses to participate. We have microphones. We'll walk them around. Who would like to start with a comment, question, concern? All right, we always start slow like this. Always start slow like this. So I'll tell you what, how about instead, I asked Senator Rodrigues if he'll come up and maybe give us a 2 or 3 minute overview of what the passage of this last year actually means and what the state of Massachusetts is looking at this point.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here at BCC. I'm happy to talk about any topic at any time, but I guess today we're talking about the legalization of the recreational use of marijuana. And as Steve said, it was a year ago in January, so almost 19 or so months ago, the Senate President, Stan Rosenberg, knew that this question of whether or not Massachusetts should allow the recreational use of marijuana to make it legalized was going to be on the ballot in November, and we assumed it was going to pass, which it did. So he commissioned a special Senate committee on marijuana, of which I was appointed to. And we were charged with trying to learn from the experiences of other states, namely Colorado and Washington, where they had legalized the recreational use of marijuana, to learn from them how they prepared for it, learn from them what types of rules and regulations and laws they had in place, learn from them what they did right in preparing for it, and more importantly, learn from them what they did wrong in preparing for it and how they had to go back and change some decisions that they've already made. So that there were 8 of us on the committee. It was a bipartisan committee, both Democrats and Republicans, and we traveled out to Denver, and we spent a week in Denver speaking to dozens of people from law enforcement, from public health, from administration and finance, because there's lots of money involved in this also. And we came back, we issued a report, of which I believe a link of the report, here it is right here, the report that we issued, that outlined some of our concerns in areas that we knew that we had to pay very special close attention to. For instance, taxation. How much are we going to tax marijuana? How are we going to tax marijuana? How do we ensure that the tax revenues are adequate enough to pay for the regulation and administration of the legalized use? Because remember, the premise behind the ballot question was that marijuana should be treated similarly as we do with alcohol. And we have what's called an Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission. We now have what's called a Cannabis Control Commission that's going to administer all the nuances of the law. We also looked at things like edibles. What we did learn was that 50% of all the marijuana consumed in Colorado was not smoked, but was eaten in the form of edibles. And concerns around things such as the fact that when you consume marijuana by eating it, it could take 20 to 40 minutes before the THC, which is the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana, to enter your bloodstream, and you can begin to feel the effects of it. So what happened in Colorado is that in the first year of legalization, emergency room admissions for overconsumption, because you can consume too much marijuana. You can overdose on marijuana. You might not think it, but you can. You can, primarily through eating it, because you eat a gummy bear or you eat something that's laced with THC, 10 minutes later, like, I don't even feel the effect of it. I'm going to eat some more. I still don't feel it. I'm going to eat some more. The next thing you know, you're in the emergency room. So that increased by over 6,000% in the first year in Colorado. Another thing we were concerned about was how you marketed edibles to ensure that it was not marketed to children and to kids, and to prevent things like candies and gummy bears and products that children normally want and consume, that they are not laced with THC, and they're not marketed to those kids. There was lots of other things, but I've already used up all my 3 minutes. I can tell you that the Cannabis Control Commission is actively working now to cross all the T's and dot all the I's and promulgate the regulations so that licenses to begin selling recreational marijuana will be issued on July 1st of next year, 2018. Who's got questions? Please, somebody. Okay, question. Very good. Excellent. A couple questions. Do I give my microphone up or? Okay. Questions or comments? I guess it's not really just a question and answer period, but it's an opportunity to have discussions.
I think you should legalize it anyway.
It is legal.
I mean, just don't tax it. Just tax it very low and sell it in the stores like liquor.
Yep. Well, liquor is taxed. Liquor is taxed. Marijuana, because liquor, alcohol, has a cost to taxpayers, is a controlled substance. The other nuance of marijuana is that it's federally illegal. It's legal in Massachusetts, but it's illegal in the country. What does that mean? That means that the U.S. Department of Justice, that administers federal laws, is kind of turned a blind eye, don't ask, don't tell. We're not going to come down, because they could come and close all the recreational facilities. They could actually arrest anyone consuming it, but they haven't as of yet. That might change with some new folks in Washington, but they haven't as of yet. But nuances such as the fact that if you are employed by a government contractor, say you get a job as an engineer or a clerical person or a staff person with a company like GE or Raytheon or United Technologies or any of these big companies that have federal contracts, you will be drug tested, and if you test positive for marijuana, you will be fired. Or say that you work for Amazon as a delivery person. In order to do so, you need to have what's called a CDL, a commercial driver's license, a special driver's license that's federally issued so that you can travel throughout any state in the country on the CDL license. You don't need to get a driver's license in each state. You can have one universal commercial driver's license. You will be tested for marijuana, and if you test positive for marijuana, you will lose your CDL license. So there's nuances that have to be properly prepared for. This gentleman over here had a question.
It's actually kind of funny that...
What's your name? What's your name?
Thomas.
Hi, Thomas.
What's kind of funny is that you're bringing up this thing about Colorado. Well, I'm actually from Colorado. And I used to work law enforcement when I worked at a thing called Country Jam. Basically, it's a country concert series for 4 days. And we ran into the issue of, okay, you know, like you said, it's federally illegal, but we were on private property. What could we do, you know? And then basically they treated it, as you said, you know, blind eye to this, unless, of course, it caused a problem. And in a way, I think we should have legalized marijuana and tax it. I think it should be taxed more, just like alcohol, because it would actually benefit schools, roads, and all of those programs that we normally don't get a lot of money for, like schools with the band program and everything else. But like you also said, market it to where it's not going to be attractive to an 8-year-old kid, to where they realize this is some dangerous stuff. Because I know people who have overdosed on marijuana, and like you said, it was actually really easy to do. It didn't take effect, and they just kept popping these little gummy bears, and next thing I know, my friend is basically drooling on himself and doesn't know who he is. You know, so we got to be extremely careful. I mean, especially with marijuana these days, because our kids are a hell of a lot smarter than we were when we were their age. And with it being so open and readily available, it makes it that much more dangerous.
Thank you so much for your comments there. I'm going to interject here for a minute, and I'm sure Michael will have, Senator Rodrigues will have a lot of opportunities to help us out again. First of all, I want to welcome our students from the other campuses. Apparently they have all logged on now, so we're ready to go. And we welcome comments from the other campuses also. You touched on a topic here, though, that I'm wondering what other folks think about. And that is, as Senator Rodrigues said, we are now treating this like we treat alcohol. And there's going to be, just as there are lots of regulations around the sale and consumption of alcohol, that'll be true of marijuana also. And then you brought up the idea of the taxes. And you made the statement that you think it should be taxed, and taxed at a good rate. What do folks think about that? What do you think about that? Come on, I know you're all thinking about this. You can't lie to me by being silent. Okay. Your counterparts at the other campuses are showing you up.
Okay, so an Attleboro student has posted that I am above the influence of drugs and always will be. Then we have Luke Cause. I'm here cooling and they should legalize it. It would be so much. LOL, my comments are popping up on the big screen as I post them.
Well, and as Senator Rodrigues pointed out, it is legalized. The state of Massachusetts is now going through the process of all the regulatory things that it has to go through in order to get to that target date of July 1st of this coming year, 2018.
And then one student in Attleboro states that states that have already legalized the use of medical and recreational marijuana have statistically much lower rates of opioid abuse than those that don't. Is that true, Senator?
Not necessarily true.
There are reports out there, and you can read a report that will support your stance if you're looking for it. And yes, there absolutely are reports out there from certain locations that point to that. I'm sure, as Senator just said, I'm sure there are other reports that might refute that. And that's part of the issue of something so new like this. Even in those states that have been doing it for a couple of years, this is still new. For we as a society, this is a whole new ballgame. This is a new road we're going down. So it'll be a long time before this is truly, truly mainstream in our society.
So we have one student who says they should only help medical issues use. So in other words, she supports medicinal marijuana. And then another, Michaela, says, I completely agree with that marijuana should be legalized because it has many health benefits such as relieving stress and anxiety. I can also say that my mom had cancer and marijuana helped relieve the pain, therefore it has many medical benefits. I don't see why alcohol should be legal when it kills thousands every year, and weed shouldn't when we have never heard of someone dying from the using marijuana.
Thank you for those comments. Senator Rodrigues is going to address.
I just want to just talk about the difference between medical and recreational marijuana. Medical marijuana has been legal in Massachusetts now for a few years. And there are absolutely documented cases and I believe scientific fact that in some cases marijuana is a benefit medically. Marijuana, the plant, cannabis sativa, the plant contains different properties, chemical properties. Those properties are called cannabinoids, okay? I don't want to hit you with all this stuff, but we call them CBDs because it's easier than saying cannabinoids. There are absolutely cannabinoids, CBDs, that can treat things like stress, can treat and ease some of the symptoms of cancer, that can treat in PTSD, those cannabinoids. That's why in medical marijuana, they raise and grow these plants all indoors, grown by good scientists and good botanists to ensure that the strain, the cannabinoids that are beneficial to certain health benefits have expanded numbers in that plant. Cannabinoid that creates the psychedelic effect of marijuana, getting high, does not have medical benefits. So real medical marijuana is cultivated to improve the medical benefits of the CBDs, not the psychoactive benefits. The recreational marijuana that will be grown, where people want to consume it for the psychoactive ingredient, will be grown differently. Similarly, but differently, with different focus. For instance, I'll tell you that the marijuana that you buy on the street probably has a 5 to 8% potency of the psychoactive cannabinoid. The stuff that they'll grow indoors and that you'll buy in recreational shops will have a 20 to 25% potency. So it's much stronger, it's much more potent marijuana. But I don't think anyone disputed some of the medical benefits, but it's not the same as the psychoactive benefits.
Thank you, Senator Rodrigues. What other thoughts or questions or comments are out there? Down the end here.
Hello, my name's Daniel. I have a question regarding recreational marijuana, not so much medical. Now, you compared it to alcohol. Now, one thing I'd say is that marijuana, you have to take a lot less of it to, you know, get a high as opposed to alcohol. I mean, obviously depending on what alcohol you're drinking. But what I mean is, like, you don't need a lot to complete, you know, to what would be the equivalent of inebriated, I suppose, like, you know, to completely lose yourself. Now, what kind of, how is the state government going to handle that?
Well, marijuana is compared to alcohol only because the proponents of the ballot initiative wanted to see it legalized and regulated similarly to what we do alcohol. But it's much different, as you said. For instance, one of the regulations that's being promulgated is to ensure that consumers know what they're buying. Know that if they're buying an edible, that the potency rate is on the edible. Because what they do, and I have photos, I have really cool pictures if you want to see pictures, but what they do is they extract, they take take plants into a laboratory. It's like a biotech lab. And from the plants, they extract the THC, the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana, into a gel. It looks like honey. That gel is 100% pure THC. And then from that gel, they can infuse it in anything. In a gummy bear. I've seen THC-infused salad dressing. So you want to know what the potency of the product you're ingesting is. Just like you want to know what's the proof. Do I have a beer that's, you know, 5% alcohol? Do I'm drinking wine that's 14% alcohol? Am I drinking a shot of whiskey that's 40% alcohol? Am I drinking moonshine that's 100% alcohol? We want to make sure, for consumer protection and public health reasons, that consumers, when you go to buy marijuana, you know what you're buying. So that's how it's compared to alcohol. It has much different effects physically on folks. Dependency. We all know people who are alcoholics, who are dependent on alcohol. 12% of all marijuana consumers become dependent on marijuana. It is a psychoactive ingredient that does affect your brain. That's how you get high, because it has an effect on your brain. And 12% of all marijuana users become physically addicted to marijuana. Because, you know, you hear that. Oh, you can't become addicted to it. You can't overdose. You can't overconsume. Probably if you're smoking it, you're not going to overconsume because you'll hack yourself to death, right? But if you're eating it, you can absolutely overconsume marijuana. So that's where it's compared. There was a lot of discussion of how to compose the makeup of the Cannabis Control Commission as compared to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission. So it's slightly different. The composition is slightly different. There's more public health and public safety folks on it. You know, there's lots of similarities, but as you mentioned, there's certainly lots of differences.
Yeah, I had one more question.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's a debate whether marijuana can be considered a gateway drug, but I've had multiple family members and friends of the families who have fallen into hard drugs, and they started with marijuana. Now, is that going to be another issue that's going to be...
Yeah, in our report, we reference that, and we have statistical data. But the best way to think about it is not everyone that uses marijuana is going to end up using opioids or hard drugs. But everyone that's hooked on opioids or hard drugs started with marijuana. So, you know, there's no direct correlation to not just saying because you smoke pot or consume marijuana, you're going to get hooked on the hard drugs. But everyone that is hooked on hard drugs, their gateway drug was marijuana.
Thank you.
And what Senator Rodrigues is illustrating is the information that they've acquired through the research that they did in putting this report together. But I'm interested in response to that question, to hearing from some of you of what are your thoughts on that? What are your experiences on that, either yourself or with someone you know, or because one of the things that these sessions try to do very often is we want to hear from a lot of you in terms of what somebody's asking or what somebody's saying. We want to know your experiences, your thoughts, and hopefully at the end of this all have some clarity. And another good reason why Senator Rodrigues, it's great to have him here today, because he can give us some of that clarity. He can give us some of the facts that they have uncovered. Jody, go ahead.
So just wanted to mention, though, that Senator Rodrigues and Vice President Ozog has mentioned that report that his commission did. When I emailed you all about this, I put a link for the report. You should just check it out. There's a lot of good information in it.
Hello. My question, first of all, I'm okay with the legalizing it, and I'm okay with the tax. But what about operating under, driving under, sobriety testing? Is there anything in the works as far as how do you tell somebody's too high, or, you know, not capable of driving or operating machinery or whatever? Thank you.
That's a really good question. We had a lot of discussion on driving under the influence and what is, quote unquote, under the influence or driving while impaired. Comparing it once again to alcohol, we know now, or we have a law on the books now, in a simple test. You have a there's a breathalyzer, you blow into a tube, it measures your blood alcohol level, and if your blood alcohol level is above 0.08, you are what's called pro se guilty of driving under the influence. That has taken generation to get to that point. Because once upon a time, if you blew a 0.08, that didn't necessarily mean you were driving while impaired, DWI. It took court law and case law and legislation passed that carved that clear line in the sand of 0.08. So currently, we have no breathalyzer test to measure blood THC level. I'm confident that will come. That technology will be developed. But we don't have that as of yet. Nor do we have a clear line in the sand in statute of what is driving while impaired with THC. I'm sure that will come as time moves on, but we don't have that currently. And our law enforcement personnel are concerned about that. In Colorado, what we heard from law enforcement that we talked in Colorado, that generally, if they suspected someone of driving under the influence of marijuana, they've also been using alcohol. So they just booked them under driving under the influence of alcohol because that's known standard. And these standards are being developed. They're still a work in progress.
You know, and as was mentioned before, that July 1 date is not far away. And these are very serious considerations that have not been finalized yet before this target date of July 1st comes, and this could be in your neighborhood, which we'll get to in subsequent discussion here. We've got a bunch from the other campuses.
Okay, and let me just state, right, I should have said to the outset, I'm not here to debate whether it's a good idea or a bad idea to legalize. That decision's already been made by all of you, by all of us, by the voters. It is legal. I'm just trying to give you some basis of what we're thinking about as policymakers, as lawmakers, and I'll be honest with you, we're all done debating this. We've debated it, we voted on it, we made some modifications to the law that the voters passed last November, and now it's out of our hands, and it's in the, the quote-unquote bureaucrats, the regulators, the Cannabis Control Commission, that's dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and promulgating the rules and regulations. So the debate on whether or not it's a good idea, or should Massachusetts do it, it's behind us. That door is closed. We're only looking, out the windshield, not out the rearview mirror, on how do we regulate this. And I'm just trying to give you some perspective of what we thought about, debated, and talked about as we did last February, back in January and February is when we were actually having an active debate in the legislature about this.
Thank you, Senator. I understand that Facebook Live is blowing up with comments, questions, thoughts, so go ahead, Renata, fire away.
All right, so where we left off here. Okay, so one student says, my stepdad is a veteran and medical marijuana has helped him a lot with his back and head injury. Another says that what about the side effects of marijuana? It may not be as bad as other drugs, yet we should be aware of them. One student says that they're a college student that smokes weed a lot. It has never affected my education, though it has some downfalls like not being taxable, but there's a lot of benefits to using it. Another one says medical marijuana may be better for use for anxiety than other drugs or prescriptions. Another says they should have higher taxes for this because currently some people grow marijuana in their house illegally. The state is losing money since you do not need a license to grow at home. One more student says weed is something that should not be taxed but should be given as a free sample of a gram.
Well, there's an interesting comment.
Jeff says that, look at the statistics of how many people die from alcohol opposed to marijuana. Every year there is no comparison. And then we'll
Okay, thank you. I think Alex has a comment or question.
Okay. What's the big deal about the health risk of weed? If someone feels like smoking it, let them. I mean, it's already voted on. Just let us happily smoke in the street.
Thank you, Alex. Other thoughts? Over on the other side here.
Oh, I see.
Now people are waking up. And then we have another comment here. This always happens. Starts out real slow, and then we get rolling, and we run out of time.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Tyler. Basically, I think that some people aren't thinking about the positive things of legalizing it, because I've thought that that basically legalizing it allows it to be like, you know, instead of getting drugs from like someone on the street and stuff, like getting it over the counter is more positive because I've never been on a microphone before.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Like, I don't know. Let me think. Basically, well, basically, it's just like, well, you already mentioned it yourself because, like, you know what you're getting over the counter, and it's more like you said, like alcohol. It's like, you know, I don't know. You're talking about being a gateway drug, right? But it's like people make their own choices. If they're gonna do drugs, they're gonna do it. You know, like just like you don't call alcohol a gateway drug. You know, I don't know.
Thank you. There was a second hand over there somewhere.
Hi there, everyone. So, that's a little loud. I think it will have positive implications to Massachusetts as it will bring in more revenue for the state. As one person that personally has used it, I have anxiety. I have depression. Since using it, it's actually helped me dramatically. My question is, what about those who went to jail or in prison for possession of it? Will their times be shortened? Thank you.
That's one for you, Senator.
No, that's a very good question because we have debated that. That's an excellent question. Concurrently with the marijuana law, the legislature is dealing with, well, there are over 7,000 bills filed in the legislature. And one big topic that we just completed debating is something called criminal justice reform. And both the House and we in the Senate passed different versions of criminal justice reform. Both versions in the House and Senate passed in our branches. It's not law yet. Yes, to reduce the charges or eliminate the charges for those that are in jail or under arrest for possessing and using marijuana that is now legal. It does not change the distribution, because it is still illegal to distribute marijuana. You can, under the law passed, grow your own. You can have up to 6 plants. You can grow up to 6 plants per person, 12 in a household, legally, without licenses or permits needed. But that's for your personal consumption. The only way to legally purchase marijuana is to buy it through a licensed retail establishment that will be in a neighborhood near you come July 1st.
Thank you. Is it Michael? Tom. I think Tom has another comment or question here. And then let's talk a little bit about the whole neighborhood thing.
I myself, again, believe that recreational use for marijuana should be regulated, because what if you get something that you think you're getting is tainted somehow, whether it's mixed with another drug or a diuretic or something where not everybody's going to have the same symptoms. You know, say there's an antidote in it and all of a sudden this kid's in the hospital and they don't know what's causing it because they don't know what she smoked or ingested, but that was mixed in with the marijuana.
Thank you. So we keep hearing about July 1st and coming to a neighborhood near you. I'm interested, I'm sure we're all interested in hearing, what do you think about that? What if right next door to you someone decides they're applying for a license to open up a facility to legally dispense marijuana? Your thoughts?
So with the dispensaries opening up, I believe Colorado even had a specific, like, you know how there's clubs, you go to a club, you drink. They have clubs for smoking in them. Will that be a thing as well?
Well, that is one of the things under consideration right now, but I'm sure Senator can elaborate on that.
So, like alcohol, and here we go comparing it to alcohol again, it will still be illegal to publicly consume. You cannot walk out on the street with a bottle of beer. You're not going to be able to walk out of the street and smoke a joint. So what they have in Colorado are clubs, like alcohol bars, smoking clubs, or marijuana clubs. They also have, has anybody here ever been to Denver, Colorado? Okay, so in Denver, they have that downtown mall area. I think it's called 16th Street Mall, which is kind of like a pedestrian mall with a limited access. They actually have a vehicle, a van, a bus, small bus, with all blacked out windows that you can hop on the bus, go around the block, smoke a joint, and get off the bus legally. So the licensing of those establishments are done on a local level. In Massachusetts, we are a very much what we call a home rule state, that we give a lot of the licensing responsibilities and decision making on things like that to our local communities. So we as a state is not going to tell Fall River or Lakeville or Westport what to do. It's up to them to decide how they're going to license and regulate and how many they're going to license and regulate. What the law says, that there shall not be less than, I think, 10% of the number of liquor licenses within your town. At least one. So if your town has 10 package stores, you have to have one recreational marijuana license facility. And you cannot zone the marijuana license facility differently than what you do alcohol. So if you allow a package store on this corner, you have to allow a recreational marijuana facility on this corner. You can't redline discriminatorily zone. If a town chooses, a community chooses, that they do not want a facility in their town, then there's two ways that they can opt out. It's an opt-out law, not an opt-in law. A town doesn't vote to allow it. It has to take a vote to disallow it. If your town voted in the referendum positively to allow recreational marijuana, then the only way to opt out is to go back to a referendum question. In my senatorial district, I have 7 communities. I have Fall River, Westport, Somerset, Swansea, Freetown, Lakeville, and Rochester. Only Lakeville voted no in a plurality on the question. And I look at Nelson because he's from Lakeville. So Lakeville, since they voted no, would not have to go to a referendum, but their chief executive officers, in their case, the Board of Selectmen, can vote by a board vote not to allow it. Every other community in the district that I represented voted more yes votes than no votes. So in order for them to disallow it, they'd have to go back to a referendum, back to the ballot. Now, the incentives, tax incentives. We talked about taxation. So there are marijuana, recreational marijuana will be taxed by the state. So the Commonwealth of Massachusetts will get tax revenue. It will also have local taxes. So each community has at least 3 up to a 6% tax rate. So there's financial incentives for communities also to allow the facilities.
Thank you, Senator. I have a couple of comments. First, you're showing your age. You said package stores. Okay. I think half the people in here have no idea what a package store is. A liquor store.
Who doesn't know what a package store is? You know? It's a liquor store. Okay, we call them package stores.
That goes back to when we were young, when you had to you had to have it in a package. You couldn't leave the establishment without it being in a package. So they called them package stores. That goes way, way back.
We call them packies.
Packies, yeah.
Packies.
The other comment is, if you can clarify, Senator, you said that a town that allows liquor stores, if there's a ratio. If they allow 10, they have to allow at least 1.
No less than 1.
No less than 1. That doesn't mean they're forced to have 1. That means they have to allow at least 1 license.
No less than 1. So they can allow 1, 2, 10, 20, 100. It's up to them.
But they're not forced to have 1, is what I'm saying. If nobody comes forward who wants the license, they don't have to have 1 in their town, right?
No. You need a licensee. You need someone to apply for a license. But if one person applies for a license in your town and you have licensed liquor stores in your town, you pretty much have to award that license.
Students, we want to hear from you. What's on your mind?
Anybody?
Okay, well, hang on. We have some more from the other campuses.
So a good question from a New Bedford student is, where will the tax money for the recreational marijuana go? Has it been earmarked in particular places, or does it go to the general fund?
The state tax revenue has been earmarked in a couple places. First place it will go is to pay for the Cannabis Control Commission, pay for the administration and regulation of the law. And there are many administrators and regulators that are going to be hired to implement the law. The second place it goes to is for the Department of Public Health for addiction treatment services. We are always struggling, as we know, the opioid crisis is real. Here in Fall River is real everywhere in every community around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we are always struggling for money, for resources, in order to provide for more treatment options, more treatment beds, and more help for people who are addicted to opioids. So a portion, I forget the percentages, but a portion of the tax money, significant portion of the tax money, is going to go to the Department of Public Health for substance abuse treatment programs. Local communities can use the money as they see fit. And in most local communities and towns, it'll be town meeting, which is the legislative branch of the town, They will decide how the money is spent.
Thank you. We have a couple of general comments. I've been smoking for like 3 years, and never in my life have I woke up and text my friends like, hey, weed isn't doing it for me anymore. Let's try crack or something that gives me a more intense high. Then we had Shannon brought a question from a student in Taunton that says, is the age limit going to be 18 or 21? I feel it should be 21.
The age limit is 21, the same as alcohol.
Okay. And we have...
Can I just comment on that for
Sure.
a minute? Okay, because we had a lot of debate about this. Because science will tell you that the human brain does not fully develop till you're 26. So there was a lot of debate because marijuana has a much different psychoactive effect on the brain than alcohol does. Alcohol has more of a physical dependency. Marijuana has more of a psychoactive dependency. We had an active debate on whether or not to increase the age for marijuana consumption to age 26 when the science tells us your brain is fully developed. But we kept it at 21 as the law. That's what the law said that we all voted on.
Anybody? Senate?
Kathy? Kathy? Gentlemen.
Was there a hand down here? Oh, it's a couple of hands. All right, we'll get to you.
It's all kind of swept. Say your name, please.
Okay, I'm Alan. I have a question for that 21 thing. Isn't it by the age of 21, if you haven't had any controlled substances, your risks of using...
Can you hold the microphone a little closer?
Sorry. Isn't it by the age of 21, if you haven't used any controlled substances at all, your risk of using them decreases significantly, even though we know the brain fully develops at age 26?
I can't comment on. I'm sure there's some professors here in the college that could comment on that, but that I'm not qualified. It makes sense to me, but that I can't comment on.
Is there anyone in here who has some more hard and fast facts on that? I know I've read reports where it said it's much less likely that you will, but certainly not a guarantee that you wouldn't after that age. Because most experimentation starts at a younger age. But no, I don't know that I know any scientific proof or facts of that.
We have a question.
Hi, my name is Annette. So you can't drive with an open alcohol container, right? It's against the law. Can you drive smoking marijuana?
No, you cannot.
People need to hear that.
Hi, my name's Mary. I do agree with a lot of the comparisons to marijuana with alcohol. I think they are very similar things. And it is true that we have a lot of abuse of alcohol. Like, it is the most abused drug in our country. And I feel like one of the main reasons it's abused so much is because it's very normalized. People see it as just something you do, and they don't think about it. And I feel like part of my concern with marijuana is that I feel like it is becoming very normalized. And it is true that, like, it's up to people make decisions, and you can use it like alcohol. Alcohol can be used responsibly. I do wonder, though, like you were saying, the brain isn't fully developed yet, and I don't know if we have a whole lot of research on what the effects actually will be, especially if you're a lot younger. And I just feel like there needs to be more public awareness, because once it becomes, it's legalized, and so people will be making money off of it. And once it becomes, a capitalist thing, people are going to want to keep making money off of it, and I feel like it will be very easy to cover up the negative effects of it. Just like cigarettes, for a very long time, they were very normalized, and it's only recently that you see a large ad campaign really trying to convince people that it's very bad for you and you should not do it. And I wonder if there will be a similar thing with marijuana.
How are they treating the effects of contact high? You mentioned the van that drives around. The driver must be getting pretty smoked out. But how is stuff like that being treated in the workplace where you have residue of marijuana on you, so all of a sudden you're being accused of using? It's going to be more frequent now that it's legal. I know that there's been cases in the past where NFL players might have said that if there was a contact, they were at a party or whatever. I'm sure that law enforcement is going to treat it similar on different circumstances. Sorry.
That's okay. That's a good question. You know, I don't remember us really talking about contact highs. I can tell you, though, that in the workplace, like I said, any employer, any company that has federal contracts, it's already illegal. They have to have a zero tolerance. You know, if they're going to manufacture a widget for a naval ship or technology, there's zero. But employers can issue the same. There are some large employers here in Fall River, manufacturing employers, that their primary concern in their workplace is workplace safety. They want to make sure their employees don't put their hands where they don't belong, or don't put their feet where they don't belong, or don't get hurt. And they have a zero tolerance policy in their employee handbook, and they are fully able to do that. There's nothing that's going to prevent them from doing that. But that provides a conflict. As they do alcohol, you can't show up to work in these places drunk or with alcohol on your breath. You're not going to be able to show up to work high or with marijuana on your breath.
I have a question over here.
Isaac Cortez. There are countries around the world that, usually in the UK, there are countries where, like alcohol, it's more accepted. There aren't as like rigid guidelines, but they have less like drunk driving deaths. There's like a lot less scenarios in which alcohol is used in a negative way. So using that kind of like thinking, that the less pressure by like the government or the law, the less people are more likely to do the bad thing just because it's a bad thing. Does the legalization of drugs in general, are there any like more positive aspects than negative?
Thank you.
I have no comment on that. I don't know. Certainly every country in the world treats alcohol differently. There are many European countries where it's just, you know, it's normal in culture, where you drink a glass of wine every night with dinner. And culturally it's treated differently. And there has been discussion about the fact where we have a taboo on alcohol until you're 21. With me, at my age, Steve's age, you know, it was 18. And that was because we were growing up during the Vietnam War. And the theory then was, you know, I could put a uniform on and carry an M16 and go to Vietnam and die for our country, but I can't come home and have a beer. So they lowered the drinking age to 18. Then they realized a lot of bad things happen with alcohol consumption by those between 18 and 21, and they raised it back up to 21. But certainly a concern with alcohol is binge drinking. College campuses have big concerns where these young adults, their first year away from home, away from mom and dad, and the binge drinking, and they drink to get totally hammered, and not good things happen when that happens. So there are some cultural nuances and differences between here in the United States and certainly in Europe.
And I will add to that it doesn't matter what the product is, but it is very often not the law that diminishes or increases consumption or usage. It's education. Education is often the biggest factor in determining whether or not someone will or won't. Hence the rapid and continuing decrease in smoking in this country, cigarette smoking in this country. It hasn't come about mostly through the laws, it's come about through education more than anything else. I want to go back to something that was raised all right, we'll get to 1 second. Something was raised a little while ago about contact high, and you did a nice job of addressing that. But something else that's real, and that's in terms of it may be legal. Let's even isolate it to medical marijuana. So it may be legal for you to have medical marijuana, to use medical marijuana, and then very soon recreational marijuana. But as you mentioned about employers still have the right to implement certain rules regarding what you can and cannot do at the workplace. But we're seeing cases of people who it's showing up in blood tests, even if they're not actively under the influence, but it's showing up. Traces are showing up in blood tests or drug tests that they take, and they're either being denied jobs or losing jobs because of that. And it was only a matter of time before the first court cases, the first challenges came and are now in front of the courts. And I didn't know if, after we address these, if you can speak to those court cases in Massachusetts.
Okay, so we have from Kerry 2 different comments. I'm trying to catch the first one. So Kerry wanted to comment on, I'm sorry, I lost my place. So as a mother of a child with special needs, I am super excited about the possibilities of helping with temper tantrums and et cetera related to nonverbal autism. And then her question to Senator Rodrigues was, can you please ask Senator Rodrigues if he knows of any firsthand knowledge of how marijuana has helped individuals with special needs?
I don't have any firsthand knowledge of how marijuana has helped with special needs, but I do know that and this is, once again, you really have to differentiate between medical and recreational marijuana, but there are known medical benefits, psychoactive benefits to medical marijuana. She really should consult a physician that knows the benefits. And I do anecdotally know parents with children that are either autistic or have other particular issues where medical marijuana has helped them.
Okay. And I have one more question directly for Senator Rodrigues, and I think we touched upon this a bit, but what are your thoughts on a marijuana social club?
I have no thoughts on a marijuana social club. That will be up to the local communities whether or not they want to have a marijuana social club. So I have no thoughts on it. I just want to bring up something that Mr. Ozog raised relative to court challenges by employees. So I'm an employee of a company. I am not under the influence. Maybe I use marijuana and I haven't used it in a couple days, but it's still in my bloodstream. So my employer tests me and it comes up positive and he fires me. Can he do that? I'd say probably yes. Can you challenge that in court? Absolutely yes, because you can take anything to court. Who will win? We don't know. These cases are being developed as we go, just like driving under the influence. It's not driving under the influence. The charge is DWI, driving while impaired. What is that impaired level for marijuana? Is it different? Can I have a 2% alcohol THC level in my blood and be not under, it does not influence my driving, but you might need 8%? I mean, so where do we have a legal standard? That takes a while to happen because, it just takes a while. And that's a work in progress.
Isaac Cortez again. I was just curious, my stance on drug legalization is I think that if people want drugs, they're going to find a way to get drugs. So just the best way to handle it is to kind of organize it through the government, like a legalization of drugs that's handled by the government in the way that cigarettes and alcohol, it's like a market. And I think that would just stop, that would kind of regulate like overdose and that kind of stuff. I was just curious what your opinion on that was.
I have really no opinion on that. I think that someone had mentioned earlier about the benefits of legalizing, and we're only talking about marijuana now. It's a much different. I think we have to be careful when we start talking about opioids, whether they're real or synthetic opioids, the fentanyl and carfentanil and all the products that are hitting the street now, because those have much different and drastic physiological effects on the human body than what THC does, which is the active ingredient in marijuana. But one thing, I mean, one benefit of legalizing recreational marijuana is that you as a consumer are going to know what you're buying. When you buy it off the street, you don't know what you're buying. You don't know if it's laced with something else. Whereas if you buy it in a regulated store, you're going to know what you're buying. So the likelihood of you having ill side effects is lessened.
Question back there.
You know, you have to talk on this so the other campuses can hear you on Facebook Live.
So then what's the what's holding it back from being legalized citywide and statewide? If we know what's going to be in them when we buy them from a dispensary, why do we have to worry about what's on the street? If we know what's on the street, why are we going to be pushing it off and pushing it off?
Yeah, it is legal. It will be here July 1st.
Anybody? Did I see? I thought I saw something.
Yeah, like I definitely, oh yeah, sorry, I'm Mary again. I agree that there are definitely benefits with, yeah, like knowing what's in it so that you're not going to get it laced with other things there. And I feel like there's really no easy thing either way. I think my main concern is that, you know, once it becomes a market and people are making money off of it, like the corporations, they're not going to, you know, when research comes out and shows things like markets and corporations, they have a lot of power to influence what information gets out because they want to keep making money. And so I am concerned about like what are the overarching problems or what's going to happen with this, and then once it becomes a market, it's not going to go away.
Yeah, those are legitimate, absolutely legitimate concerns, not just about marijuana, but about any product, which is why we need to rely on the Department of Public Health to access. That was another big takeaway from Colorado, was you need data, collect data. You need baseline data. How many people are going to the emergency room? What are they going to the emergency room for? How many people are getting arrested? How many people are being charged? You know, is to make sure we collect the data. And our State Department of Public Health, not corporations, are going to be collecting that data. That's critical as we move forward, because this is a work in progress. It was legalized July 1st. The stores will be licensed and open for retail sales, and here we go. You know, so we have to make sure we collect any and all data.
You have a question?
Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm Kevin, and what I find interesting to be about the whole legalized marijuana issue is how, for a lot of American history and for a lot of history in general, marijuana was legal. People were known to have grown it millennia ago. Even back in ancient Greece, Herodotus told about the benefits of marijuana steam baths, and it was even used in medication in the 1800s. It turns out when prohibition was ending, the government needed some sort of drug to make illegal, similar to how alcohol was done. Otherwise, they would lose their funding in that section of government. So what happened was marijuana was one of the main products to come out of that. And even one of Nixon's advisors said that the idea of marijuana being illegal was so that he could associate marijuana with the hippies, criminalize it, and then destroy the whole anti-war movement. And he knew that the government was lying about this, and yet still went on with it just because that way they could go through with their agenda. So I find it to be interesting how it was legal for so long, and yet now we have this whole movement about whether or not it should be illegal or legal as it's becoming legal again. And I do believe, though, that it should be left up to the individual states, but it should be legal on a federal level. And that way we could still have places that will tax it and places that will ban it as they need in order to fit their community and their economies.
Thank you. Oh, you got him.
Oh, I just had a general comment about how businesses will start selling marijuana and stuff. And depending on how many consumers they're going to get in their business, they're going to try to mass production them. And with that, you know, you get like cheaper ingredients in certain food products. But I think they should have like a kind of like a health inspector will come in and check certain things in a restaurant to make sure it's viable. Have something similar to that concept and make sure they're following all the guidelines, not lacing them with anything else, etc.
Once again, a very good point. You must have followed us on our committee tours. But what we learned in Colorado and what we've adopted here in Massachusetts is called seed to sale tracking. That although in growing, so whatever is sold in a retail dispensary, you have to trace it right back to its birth. They call it seed to sale. But I will tell you that marijuana plants grown in these, and there's a big one, I mean real big one, being built a couple miles up the road in Freetown, 1 million square feet, that they don't start their marijuana plants by seed. They start them by cloning them. Why? Is because male plants are useless. It's the female plants that have the buds and secrete the THC oil to attract and retain the pollen from the male plants. So they only clone female plants. And in Colorado, every single plant from the time it's 8 weeks old, and it's about this big, gets an RFID number and tag inserted with that plant so that they can track it electronically where that plant goes as it grows up, as it matures, 5 months later to a plant that's about this big, and where it goes and who's buying it. So they have very strict control from seed to sale to ensure that you as a consumer are buying what you think it is. And also to ensure that these plants are not going out the back door to fuel the black market. Another big concern that we heard in Colorado is the fact that since this is federally illegal, since according to Washington, D.C. and the federal government, and certainly under our U.S. Attorney General now, Jeff Sessions, they are definitely anti-marijuana in Washington. You cannot, a company that wants to sell or distribute legally a marijuana cannot use a bank. Everything has to be in cash because of something called the federal RICO statutes, which is statutes focused on organized crime, that whether it's Bay Coast Bank or Bank 5 or Bank of America cannot knowingly engage in a business activity with someone who's conducting a federally illegal business. So everything is done cash. So who has the $8 to $12 million in cash necessary to get one of these seed to sale growing operations, retail operations up and running? Organized crime. So in Colorado, they traced many of these legally regulated businesses backdoor channel to Mexico and the Mexican cartels. So that's another nuance. So for instance, if you work, there are going to be jobs created. People have got to grow. These growing facilities, 1 million square feet, might have 40 jobs. You're going to get paid in cash. You're not going to get paid direct deposited or with a paycheck. You're going to get paid in cash. When the company wants to buy a new building, they got to buy it in cash. They have to buy equipment, grow lights and equipment. They're going to pay cash for it because they cannot open up a company checking account. Not because they don't want to. It's easier, right? It's easier to keep it doc, but because the banks, the financial institutions, are prohibited from participating in that by federal law. So it's complicated.
Thank you, Senator. If anyone was waiting, they just brought in a little more pizza, I believe, by the way. That's probably the end of it, so if you're waiting for a slice, now's the time to grab it.
Hi, Chris, everyone. So I'm just wondering, let me get this straight, I guess. You're saying that court cases can't quite figure out like what's right and what's wrong?
No, there's been no court cases yet. There's nothing to go to court yet.
Okay,
That's going to have to go through the process.
So let me ask this then. You can go out on the weekend and have a couple beers with your buddies or whatever, and then so once this is legal, what's to allow a workplace to fire somebody for participating in outside of the workplace activities? Is it because the effects of is it because the THC doesn't leave your body fast enough? Or?
Correct. Yep. Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And if they are a federal contractor and they take your blood test, the contract they sign with the federal government says you cannot have any illegal substances. Your body cannot contain any illegal substances. So we have many big federal contractors in Massachusetts. Think of GE, think of Raytheon, think of General Dynamics, think of companies that we don't like to work for. You go to work for them, I promise you, I have a brother that works for, you will get drug tested. Not because they want to, it's because they have to. And you turn up anything in your blood that is federally illegal, you will be fired. Even if you're a good employee and they like you because they have to. And they're not going to jeopardize their millions and billions of dollars contract,
Couple points on that before we get to that comment or question. But there's also a long precedent for employers being able to do that with other components of someone's life. Police departments and fire departments that don't allow their employees to smoke cigarettes. You can't be a smoker in many places any longer and still be employed on a police or fire department, and yet it's a perfectly legal product. So there is a precedent. This isn't something new. And when Senator said there are no court cases, I assume you mean in Massachusetts, because I believe there are in other parts of the country where they've also legalized recreational use and people are losing jobs, and they are now, cases in front of the courts.
Yeah,
but
Colorado,
not in Massachusetts.
Right, Colorado and Washington have a 3-year head start on us. They did this 3 years ago. It will happen here. It will happen. Someone's going to lose their job. They're going to go to court.
I'm Sev. So in regards to THC being in the body, I know that there are some policies that are currently being worked out in regards to driving under the influence when it comes to marijuana, but as of right now we don't have a system to test how much THC is in the body, only that it's really there, if I remember right, like how we can test like the blood alcohol level. We can't do the same thing with THC. So what's being done in regards to that to make it more specific?
Okay, there is a way to test it, but it's a very invasive test. It's a blood test. So if a police officer pulls you over, the last thing they're going to want to do is have to bring you to the hospital or a doctor's office that have blood drawn. That's a very invasive test. Very expensive, probably $300-400, as opposed to alcohol where you blow into a tube and it measures it. That will be developed. I'm confident that that will be developed. The only reason it hasn't been developed is because there wasn't a demand for that product in order for the company developing it to make money. So if I'm XYZ company and I develop the blood alcohol device that I blow into, well, now there's a demand for me to measure blood THC. I'm sure they'll do it. That's just a technological gap. And money will fix that. Now, every town in Massachusetts is going to have to buy a blood THC measuring device. So some companies are going to make make some money on it, so they will develop it. That's it. Otherwise, you have to go have a blood test, and no one's going to take anyone for a blood test suspected of being under the influence of marijuana. It's really invasive.
But all you entrepreneurs out there, read between the lines here.
There's an opportunity.
There's an opportunity, yes. Every city and town in
get on it.
Commonwealth of Massachusetts will need this device at some point, and if you're the entrepreneur that develops it, you could be sitting pretty.
Hi, Kevin again. I just had two questions about the sale. One, when I drive by a 7-Eleven or a Cumberland Farms, I'll see a sign outside the cigarette sign that says lowest price by law. Will there be a similar thing with marijuana where the government regulates how much you can sell marijuana for?
No, there's no minimum legal price.
Okay. And then also, what form will it be sold in? Is it going to be just like the stuff you see in bags on TV, or is it also in the marijuana cigarettes and brownies and that
It'll
sort of
be
thing?
sold in every form imaginable.
Yikes.
It will be sold in just raw marijuana buds. And if you go into Colorado, into a recreational store, you have your choice. It's like you do with cigarettes. There's 100 brands of cigarettes. There's going to be 100 brands of marijuana. Purple Haze, Golden Tower, blah, 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 blah. So you can purchase the brand that you like, because everyone's going to have different properties, okay? And there are edibles. We are very concerned about edibles because you can eat a gummy bear. It can be 5% potency. It can be 20% potency. You don't know. So we want to have clear labeling on that. The country that does edibles, in my opinion, the best is Amsterdam, Holland. Amsterdam, marijuana has been legal forever. They have one edible in Amsterdam. It's called, don't laugh, but it's called space cakes. Okay? It is a known product. You look at it, you know it's a space cake. It is a known potency. It's all the same. So you know I can eat a half a space cake or a whole space cake or 2 space cake or whatever. You know, it's known. We're not there yet. There's also something else called vaping, right? Where they take this THC concentrate and they crystallize it. So it's very, very potent. And you put it in an electronic cigarette machine. Anybody here have an e-cigarette machine? Okay, you put it in your e-cigarette machine and it ignites it and you inhale the vapor from the pure THC concentrate. I'll tell you another area is schools. Because, you know, now if somebody's smoking a joint in the men's or ladies' room, the whole school knows, right? You can smell it everywhere. With vaping, you can't smell it. There's no odor associated with it. Or with edibles, there's no odor associated with it. Same thing with edibles. Schools are very concerned that kids are coming in with snacks, right? You all had your backpack, you had your snacks. They don't know what's in the snack. Whereas opposed to, I think Amsterdam did it because they have times ahead of you, that they created this product called Space Cake. So every teacher knows what a space cake looks like.
Thank you, Senator. Do we have anything else today? We are getting close to...
Anything from the other campuses, Renata?
All right, one more comment from another campus.
Amy says, I see the legality of marijuana as a major war with big pharma companies. Pharmacists are already being told that there are no proven medicinal benefits to marijuana. Of course there are. How do we see this affecting future legislation? Who will be responsible for the factual oversight of this?
You know, that's a good question. My job as a legislator, as a senator, is to take information from everybody and to listen to all sides. Every issue we deal with, there are differences of opinions. Every issue we deal with, there are big pharma, or big tobacco, or big alcohol, or big education interests that are trying to influence our opinion. And that's what we do. And that's part of being a legislator, is to sort through all the conflicting information that we receive, analyze it, and try to make our decision based on what we think is the right information. Every cause, every issue whether it's something great like the environment or renewable energy, or it's something bad like tobacco or big pharma, have people representing them. And we have to listen to all the information and make decisions based upon what we think is correct. So that's kind of a loaded question because someone had a predisposed opinion that Big Pharma is opposed to this. I can tell you that not all are, because the scientific facts prove that there are medicinal benefits to medical marijuana. But thank you all very much. This is really, really helpful for me. Please know, and I want to introduce Kelly Andrade right here. Kelly's my legislative aide that works in the district, so you might see her around campus because it's her job to be places when I'm not able to be there because I'm in the State House. And I also want to put out to all of you an offer. I am always looking for interns in my office. So if anybody out there thinks they might have an interest in seeing what it's like to work in the state senator's office, please come and see me. See Miss Burns. Is that what they call you? I call you Kathy? I call you Kathy. I wanted to make sure. Or see Kathy, because I'm always looking for interns. And let me tell you, it's an incredible place to work. I have 3 right now working for me in my State House office, whether it's the State House or in my district office. But the door's open for you. All you have to do is ask. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for another great Pizza in Politics. We'll see many of you at the next one, Kathy, which is when? Uh-oh. Okay. That information will get out to you, but the next one will be in February. We will not meet in January since most of you won't be on campus then. If there's still pizza left, help yourself up there.